Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Ice Bailey coming to you now as the transfer window for January 2025 slams shut, with Leeds United having completed. No, let's just check that there's no transfer documentation lying around. No, no new signings. As hysteria breaks out on the streets, I would like to appeal for calm. Why? Because I actually think that this is a very healthy and good thing. Obviously, anxiety, which is something which is very much a part of following Leeds United, is going to generate a very emotional response amongst most of the fan base. But I would like to appeal for calm, and I'm going to put forward my reasons for why I think we should apply calm. Okay. Before I do that, though, it's probably only fitting that I put on my 49ers hat and proceed. As we all know, now I'm going to go over to screen share now. Okay. So I'm going to screen share so I can show you my supporting documentation to support my argument that we are well placed. So, as we know, the ladder looks something like this. Leeds United on top on 63 points with a simply mental goal difference of 41. Why is that mental? Because Burnley are the closest to us with a goal difference of 27. All right. So we are well ahead on goal difference. So effectively, what that means is we are 2.5 points ahead of Sheffield United, and it also puts us 5.5 points ahead of Burnley. Why 0.5? Well, because let's face it, it's not a full point, but then by the same token, it definitely counts if you end up locked in. My position on this season is we need to finish top two. I think it's important to aim for top one, but as long as we finish top two, I really do not care. Okay, as long as we get into the Premiership. Again, mind you, I look at that with a bit of misgivings because we all know how depressing the Premiership is because we're going to go from spending every week watching the game, hoping that we can defeat the team 3-0, and quite frankly, having a reasonable chance of that being the case. But in the Premiership next year, I'm not sure. I'm not entirely convinced that's going. Just going to move one of my lights because one of my lights just decided to die. How amateurish. In any case, the Premiership next year, on the assumption we get promoted, it's going to be a little bit depressing, quite frankly. But that we have to get there because, well, look, honestly, the way the football worlds are aligning, uh, there is a global movement against the structure of the game, specifically with promotion relegation. So I would not want to gamble my club's future on not being in the top flight or Premier League within the next 5 to 10 years, because I think that we could very much see a significant change in the structure of football, and you really need to be a part of that. So, Leeds United 63, Sheffield United 61, Burnley 58, Sunderland 58. I'm not really looking too closely at the teams below them because they're quite frankly not going to be able to catch us. I do, however, look with a little bit of concern at Blackburn, just given their record against us. If we happen to slip into third, I feel awkward about playing Blackburn at Wembley for a place in the Premier League, just based on how matches have gone thus far. All right, so we can slide that across to the side, and we can then go to my next piece of supporting evidence. This is our season to date and our fixtures to come. Notice, as I said, I've only actually included the top four because, in my opinion, we're competing for top two. We will obviously, and Brendan Harrison was quoted about us pursuing top spot. Look, realistically, you don't shoot for second, you shoot for first, and if you miss, well, you end up in second place. This shows our results. First column, Leeds, Burnley, Sheffield United, Sunderland. I need to qualify the points total of Sheffield United. They have suffered a 2 point deduction. My understanding is that was based on I think it was called FFP at the time. They've probably changed it. It probably doesn't matter what they call it. It's usually just end up going to be the target of institutionalized cheating by any other club to try to get around it. But the bottom line is there's that much money in football now. It was inevitable that the lawyers, the bottom feeders they are, were going to find their way to football and peddling their wares. So, as we can see, we've just finished the rounds that basically occurred around the 20, the 2nd of February. Obviously, Sunderland have just played, so we can actually update this. We can do this live. So Sunderland defeated Middlesbrough earlier this morning to claim 3 points and keep the pressure on, quite frankly. That takes them to 58 points, so that keeps them level with Burnley, obviously with a lesser for and against. Their for and against is 19, as opposed to Burnley with a for and against of 27. I've divided the balance of the season into basically blocks of games. We have the February stretch, which is unremarkably the matches from February until the 2nd of March. The March block, so this is a block of fixtures, so 9th, 13th, 16th. Significantly after that is a time of great anxiety for Leeds fans, the international break. We then have the April block, the Easter block, and then the season's done. The reason I've broken it up like this is to compare the relative runs, to compare where teams are. Obviously, Leeds rivals have, in some cases, added significantly to their roster, and that's going to cause a bit of anxiety. But I think that we can actually, I don't think we need to be particularly stressed about that, and I'll explain my arguments as to why I think that is the case. So you can see over the February stretch, focusing specifically on Leeds, we have Coventry away, Watford away, Sunderland at home, Sheffield United away, and then West Brom at home. Coventry are resurgent under Fat Frank. He's come into Coventry and appears to be doing a pretty remarkable impersonation of a manager. And he has turned their fortunes around. Seems as though he's actually doing Seems as though he's doing some genuine coaching this time, as opposed to just using his contacts in the industry to get some signings on board that are going to elevate him above his team's current league position. I've just lost the light, so I might whip the 49ers hat off a tiny bit and go with this. Okay, so after that, we will play Watford, which away, look, that's a tricky fixture, quite frankly. You could easily envisage us losing some points there if we look at Watford. Watford are, given that they are on 41 points, they're hovering not that far out of the playoffs. Okay, we can perhaps talk about what they've done in the window, but after that we have the two fixtures which will really define, in my opinion, our season. We have Sunderland and we have Sheffield United. Sunderland at home, Sheffield United away. That's going to be a really big fixture. Obviously, on the 28th of January we played Burnley. We were expecting that was going to be a season-defining fixture, but it ended up being a bit like New Year's Eve, really. You go out, you're all pumped up. This is going to be the best night of your life. You're going to meet the woman of your dreams. And it just ends up, having a shitty train ride home, a little bit hungover, after someone's got into a punch out front of a pub that you then didn't get let into. So in any event, we will then finish out the February stretch with West Brom. It's a really big month for us. Now, the reason I think that ties in with our transfer window is even if we had brought players in, who are you dropping? Like, who are you bringing in that is going to walk straight into your squad? You're not going to bring in anyone who's going to walk straight into your squad, because if they're that good, they're not coming to a championship team, even if they look as though they're being promoted. No player who's going to walk straight into our starting 11 or even knock someone off the bench, quite frankly, because we have a team that is functioning really well. 7-0 result against Cardiff. That team hummed. Okay. I was a little concerned last year when we played Leicester and we beat them at Elland Road, and the carry on was a little bit over the top. Okay. I think and it made me nervous looking at it because I thought, that's a lot of carry on for early in the season, and the job's not done yet. And unfortunately, as it turned out, through a combination of injury and perhaps lack of squad depth, we fell away. And that lack of squad depth and the events of last year are what is actually haunting us this year. Although we have to point out last year was a significant anomaly in that we had Leicester barnstorming the lead, cheating to do so, I might add, because you have to remember they weren't actually in the championship and they weren't in the premiership. They were just kind of these phantoms existing between both leagues, which meant they could do, well, whatever the hell they wanted with their salary caps. Hopefully, they get relegated, drop down to the championship. I'm quite sure that the championship, the powers that rule the championship, will be able to find all sorts of ways to mess with them. We can only hope. In any event, all of these fixtures are fixtures that we could easily drop points in. I'm very happy that we've got Sunderland at home. We came within, well, I think the rumour is it was a sprinkle ahead in the 6 yard box of defeating them away earlier in the season. Unfortunately, one of those events that Millier is going to spend a lot of time trying to live down. Sheffield United away, that will be a barnstormer. I don't believe that we will go to Sheffield United at home, at their home, and have them basically do what Burnley did, which is Burnley just rocked up happy with a point. Okay, they were very happy to leave that game with a point. Yes, they're somewhat negative, but they were just very happy with a point. And quite frankly, if they're the best defence in the comp versus the best attack in the comp, in most competitions, the best defence and the best attack are going to cancel themselves out if it's a fair and balanced comp. West Brom, look, I would consider West Brom a potential banana peel, but I'm very confident taking them on at home. I'm not going to get into speculating how many points that we take away from those games. But what I would point out is each of those are games which we will need to be at our best. And fortunately, coming off a 7-0 win against Cardiff at home, where we displayed a ruthlessness that I don't recall a Leeds United side showing in recent years. Okay, we were utterly ruthless. We brought Nonto off the bench. We brought Radrazani off the bench, and they were ruthless. All right. That is the energy that we have on the bench. And I think that typifies where the squad is, that we have competition for spots. We have bench players who are happy to come on. They know they're going to get 20 minutes because, let's face it, Dan Farker makes only substitutes on the 70th minute. It's as though he's a member of a cult, believes the mothership's coming in the 70th minute. But in any event, we have a side that's pumping. Our risk is injury. And in that on that note, yes, we do have vulnerabilities if we were to lose Pirro, if we were to lose Aronson. That's the one that really concerns me. He's been playing out of his skin this year. He's obviously a much maligned figure due to the some sections of the fan base and their relationship to him last year. But I don't really think that you can argue that he's just putting in. He's being run into the ground and he's still producing. He's producing goals. He's producing assists. He would probably have more assists if our finishing was more clinical, but you cannot doubt the kid's output. So if we then look across the other teams, we have a tricky February. The good thing is we're at our peak. Okay. And I would also argue that any signings that we were going to bring in, we were never going to sign any player who was going to walk straight into the starting lineup. We may have signed players who would come on and add a bench spot, but quite frankly, we're strong across the bench. I mean, have a look at any of the teams that we've been fielding. We're strong all the way across the bench. Would probably be better if Bamford was fit. I personally believe that Pat will have a role to play at some stage of this season, whether it's coming on and providing an assist, whether it's coming on and scoring a goal, maybe even shithousing a goal somehow. I believe Pat will have a part to play, and hopefully it will be an involvement that can allow him to end his time. Because if we get promoted, Pat Bamford's not going to be playing a role in this side. Let's face it. But it will give him an opportunity to sign off in a manner which suits the service he has given our club. Because the reality is, whilst he's been on and off with injuries, he's been a fantastic servant of the club and was a critical member of Marcelo Bielsa's Premiership winning team, the Championship winning team, and also the first season in the Premiership. I think what did he get? 17 goals, massive contribution to keeping us up. So let's move on. Burnley, significantly, if we scroll down, now you notice I have highlighted in red teams in the top four. Okay. Burnley have a stretch. So they've got Oxford, Hull, Preston, Wednesday, and Cardiff. The significant fixture in there for mine is probably Hull, because I think Hull are going to really be a resurgent team. I think they've been active in the window. They have a new manager, so they're experiencing some manager bounce. And I don't think they were ever that bad a squad or that bad a club. Blades, well, the Blades obviously play us, but they also have Middlesbrough. Okay, Middlesbrough. They're going to be coming off a loss to Sunderland, so they're going to be wanting to stay in the hunt. They've also been very active in the window. It's not a bad thing from our perspective, though, in terms of they can't catch us. We could drop into the bottom four and end up having to go to playoffs. And quite frankly, if we do that, it's on our own head. We don't play them again until the 9th of April, after the international break. And then finally, moving over to Sunderland. Look, honestly, the only other top four team they play is us, Leeds, and they obviously play us in about 2 weeks. That will be a massive fixture for them, massive fixture for us, because a win there is effectively a 6-pointer. We can kick clear. Similarly, Sheffield United on the 25th of February, a win there and we can kick clear. We could easily be 10 points clear by the end of February if we can carry our form further. Now, where this feeds in, if we have a look at Burnley, who will play Sheffield United on the 22nd of April, and that's a really good game for us because they're both teams who are chasing us. So more than likely, that will probably cancel each other out. For us, we have a run of fixtures where there's no top four teams, and quite frankly, in the March block, April block, and Easter block, or the balance of the draw, we will be playing teams that we would expect to win, and there'll be teams who, to some extent at least, they will be trying to stifle us, get a goal, and then try to hold on to that lead. So it'll be very much the pattern of play that we've seen with a lot of these most of the bottom two-thirds of the draw, really. They don't come out to play. We saw it in the second game of the season against West Brom. West Brom were very happy to take a draw away from that match. Similarly, Burnley when we played them. So my point is, we get through February, and then we have our fate in our own hands, because we're not going to be playing teams that have fixtures that will affect the top four, because they're not in the top four. It's just going to be a matter of probably playing the more attacking formation, where we have Rothwell as an attacking midfielder, where we have Furbo playing at left back, because we're not so worried about defending, we're more worried about scoring goals. As opposed to now, it's actually going to be much the same for the other teams, but significantly, and this will be crucial, Sheffield United and Burnley, I would actually go so far as to say this fixture will determine second spot. Okay. What do you say? Clip it up and we'll see what it ends up being. So this is the draw home as we see it, the international break. It's a 2-week break. Of course, the problem we have there is, Brendan Harrison gets on a plane and he flies to some other part of the world and he gets a boot, gets a hematoma, and is unavailable for a couple of fixtures. That could hurt us, because honestly, in our squad, I really don't see that we have another player who's going to fill the gap and maintain the team harmony the way Aronson has. And, Farker has the team playing how he wants to play, playing smoothly and playing consistently, and just, quite frankly, we are really well placed. That said, we do need to talk somewhat about the window. So we'll jump over. Now, we'll go to the top of this document. This is the Sky Sports summary of trade show business. So first of all, Blackburn not massively influential on us, but as far as ins, they've got Augustus Cargo, Yuri Ribeiro, Adam Forshaw. It's probably not going to really turn their season around. Emmanuel Dennis, that's a handy signing. Once again, though, we don't play Blackburn again. We played them twice. And quite frankly, it could actually be to our benefit because if you have a look at whether them playing our rivals, so they play Sheffield United on at home. Oh, what Sheffield United are at home on the last day of the championship, and they play Sunderland 2 weeks earlier on the 22nd of April. So honestly, I'm actually quite happy that Blackburn strengthened their side because it's a bigger problem for our rivals than it is for us because we've already played them. So Sheffield United and Sunderland will play what I think will be a strengthened Blackburn. Yeah, they've lost some players. Bristol, they're not really factors for us. Burnley now here. Burnley has copped a lot of grief for being somewhat negative. They're very defensively minded. They have by far and away the best defensive record. You're all going to know this. They've conceded just 8 goals so far this campaign. We have the second, for context, we have the second best defensive record, and we've conceded 19 goals. So they are very good at defending their sticks. What they have added to by bringing in Jaden Bannell, Oliver Son, Ashley Barnes, and Marcus Edwards, they've brought in some additions which are going to strengthen their squad and I think strengthen them in attack. But once again, they've got a settled team with a really well organised defence, and you need to get new players into that group. That's going to take time. And it's probably going to take a few weeks. There's not very many players that are just going to bolt straight into a lineup and just run like a well-oiled machine. I think that's one of the things that Leeds has done with our transfer strategy is they've realised, well, if we bring someone in, we're not going to be signing someone who can jump straight into the lineup. We're going to be signing someone who can probably come in onto the bench and is going to be on par with what we already have. If we get promoted, we're going to have to upgrade our squad significantly. It's no coincidence that the bottom three in the Premiership right now are the same three that were promoted last year. I don't think they've had any really significant outs. Certainly none that really weaken them, which is not surprising if you're running third in the Championship. Cardiff, not really something we need to worry about. Coventry, well, credit to Fat Frank, he doesn't appear to be doing his best work in the trade market. He seems to be doing his best work as a manager. Derby, once again, I don't think we really need to dwell on that. Hull City, we won't be playing Hull City again. Obviously, they've got Joffy, but Hull will play Burnley again, and they will play Sunderland. So it might well be that Joffy can keep on marching on by helping us out in those fixtures against Burnley and Sunderland. That would be fantastic. Now we get to Leeds. As I mentioned, we've not added anyone. I don't think this is a big issue. Why do I not think it's a big issue? We are top of the table. We have the second best defensive record and the best attacking record. Daniel Farker tends to take his time to get his team playing the way that he wants them. So if you look at his seasons throughout his career, they tend to be slower starters and then settle in and then go through. So I think the squad is stronger than last year. We don't have a Jorginho, we don't have a Somerville. But what we do have is players who can bob up in a whole bunch of different positions, a bench that brings something to the team, and also a bench that Farker has confidence in. He brings those in. I mean, we've got options across at left back. We can move. We've obviously got Byron. We can play left or right. Typically, I think we see more of him when things are in a more defensive frame of mind. We will see more of Firpo on the assumption he can stay fit in the close end of the season. And I wouldn't mind betting that Firpo will probably move on at the end of the season. My opinion is he didn't really make much of a fist of the Premiership the first time he was there, and I'm not entirely convinced that he'll make much of a fist of it a couple of years older in this team. So I expect us to go into the market for a left back. Byram will be 12 months older. Firpo will probably move. I think I'm tipping him to go back to Spain. But for the time being, he's a gun left back who can basically play as a left wing or wing back. And the last game against Cardiff, he generated 3 assists, and that's coming back into the team after a period of absences. The big thing for mine with our transfer window here is we were never going to attract players who were significant upgrades on what we already have. And quite frankly, I'm not convinced that Farker would have wanted to bring in players that were stronger than what we already have, because that could have upset the dressing room, imbalanced things. At the moment, everybody seems to get along. We don't seem to have any dickheads, and there's healthy competition for places. Converse to that, do we really need to bring players in to put on the bench who are as good as our bench players as insurance against injury? Well, the reality of the situation is you just have to hedge your bets. Yes, if you bring that player in, and yes, if you get an injury, and yes, they can step up, assimilate into the system of play, then you've done a fantastic job. But that's all subjective. So that's all subject to actually getting those injuries in the first place. So, is it worth bringing in players specifically to cover injury? Look, I'm not entirely convinced, especially given that we do actually have depth across most positions. We've got Wober who can come in as a centre back. We have Byram, we have Firpo, we have Bogle, who's honestly at the start of the season, I was wondering what we were doing with Bogle. But as he's got more comfortable in the system, he's certainly the best attacking right back in this competition. Little bit shaky in defence, but he's looked more and more solid in defence as the season's gone on, and he's figured out where he has to be, and he's developed trust in those around him, and they have developed trust in him. So I don't know that we're desperately short, even if we do get an injury. Even if I mean, in some ways, even if Strack doesn't play for the balance of the season, Ampadu plays at centre back. We lose nothing really with Ampadu at centre back, and it also means that we play a more attacking formation in the middle, because you're going to have Gruev, Tanaka, and Rothwell playing in the middle of the park. And personally, I think we look at our best when Rothwell is on the pitch. One of our big decisions is whether or not to make him a full-time signing when we go into the Premiership next year, which actually feeds into my argument as to why I'm comfortable that Leeds have not gone heavily into the market this transfer window. I've already said we're not going to bring in a player who's significantly better than what we already have, which means that we'd be bringing in someone who is as good as what we already have to cover someone who's already in the squad, be it in the starting 11 or maybe on the bench. The problem with that is when we go to the Premiership next year, as we can already see with um, Leicester, Southampton, and Ipswich getting slammed, Southampton in particular are just getting absolutely mauled. Well on track to get the lowest points total in Premier League history. They all went up last year. They upgraded their squads, and they are still where they are. Okay, and the longer that happens, the longer the longer the three promoted teams get dropped down, means that it's the longer that other teams stay in the Premiership and get squad depth. I mean, you look at look at a Bournemouth, look at a Brighton. I mean, look where Tottenham and look where Scum are. Quite frankly, they've got phenomenal squads, and they're not in the top half of the Premiership. We would think it was a coup to recruit anyone in any of those teams' match day lineups. That would be a marquee loan signing if we could get one of those. That's the difference between the two. So my point is, what's the point in bringing in a player who is by definition a championship player to fill a spot if we get promoted, and then we've got this guy on the book that, what are we going to do with him now? We've signed him for 5 years. We're only going to have to send him off on loan. Perhaps it's a better approach to bring that player, to not bring that player in, stick with the squad we have. Yes, if we lose an Aronson or a Pirro for that matter to injury, well, that could leave us vulnerable. Having said that, Pirro and Aronson have excellent injury records, and we have cover in most of the other positions across the field. So, geez, it's a bit of a, to me, it's, if you weigh up bringing someone in and spending that money, okay, to cover off against the potential of injury in those positions when there's no reason to suspect that there will be an injury in those positions based on the players' histories. If you offset that against keeping that money in the tank and doing the, quite frankly, open heart surgery that the squad will require to go into the Premiership next year and stay in the Premiership, I personally think that we're pulling the right reins, especially if you look at the draw. Okay, so we'll just continue to scroll down. Luton, we don't need to worry about too much now. Middlesbrough, okay, they brought Morgan Whitaker in from Portsmouth, Josh Deddy, George Emberson from Ipswich. So that has the ring of um, basically Ipswich realizing that things aren't looking all that good for them. Braden Johnston, Ryan Giles, but then you've got Kelechi Iheanacho from Sevilla. I apologise, I probably butchered that name. And Samuel Eiling Jr. on loan from Villa, and Mark Travers on loan from Bournemouth. So Middlesbrough appear to me to have, that's going to that's potentially going to really stiffen them up a bit. All right. If we just have a quick glance over, we do play Middlesbrough. We will play Middlesbrough on the 9th of April. We will play them away. However, Burnley will not play them. Sheffield United play them in a couple of weeks. And yeah, I think Sunderland have only just played them. So they could be a headache for Sheffield United. Yeah, we play them. Are they going to take our one of our top two spots? I doubt it, but they're in the mix. Scrolling down, Millwall. I don't really want to talk about Millwall, quite frankly. I'm not really interested in talking too much about Oxford or Norwich or Plymouth or Portsmouth or Preston or Queen's Park Rangers. But then we get to Sheffield United. Obviously, change of ownership. They've got some money floating around, and they have been quite active. They've got Sam Curtis, Ben Burton Diaz, Tom Cannon coming in from Leicester, Hamaz Chowdhury coming in from Leicester, Harry Clark from Ipswich. They've been really Rob Holding from Crystal Palace. So I can understand completely how this makes people nervous. I may well, depending on how successful this video is, go into a little bit more depth into the impact that these players that they're bringing in could have. And we will play Sheffield United in just 2 weeks. Will these players have been integrated into the squad? I'm not convinced they will. And to be completely honest, it could even be that it causes a disruption to Sheffield United squad while they're bedding all of these new players in and they're getting used to their patterns of play. Either way, we have a settled squad. We don't have any real injury concerns other than obviously the niggle to Strauch is a concern. But I feel very confident going into an away fixture against Sheffield United with our side, against their side, even with their additions. And, quite frankly, we will only play them once. So, as we keep scrolling down, Sheffield Wednesday, Stoke, Sunderland. Now, they have had Wilson Isildur and Enzo Lefree from Roma. I believe these two additions will be significant additions, and they will make a difference to Southampton. We will play Sunderland. We will play Sunderland at home, and for mine, I believe we will account for them at home. That's 2 weeks away. I mean, look, even if these guys aren't on the bench, are they really going to have assimilated into the squad? I'm not convinced they will. So the worst that we will do at home against Sunderland is draw. I believe we will beat them. And if you reflect back onto the ladder, Sunderland are 5 points adrift of us with an inferior goal difference. So even if we lose, they're not going to catch us, and then it just becomes a foot race for the rest of the year. They still have Burnley to play. And they still have Middlesbrough to play. And my understanding of Middlesbrough versus, They don't have Middlesbrough to play. I've got the wrong team starting with S. Apologies. So, so yes, Sunderland have strengthened, but I don't think it's going to have a massive impact on us. If we were playing them in March or April, well, that's a different story because they will have assimilated those players into their team. They will be back into their groove. That's a different kettle of fish. Swansea, we don't need to talk about. Watford, we don't need to talk about. West Brom, um, they've got Will Lancashire from Tottenham on a loan. Is he going to really make a massive difference to West Brom and where they are? I suppose that's open. And that takes us to the end of the analysis of the transfer goings, comings, and goings. I'm going to stop my screen share now and you can come back to me. So that's probably a really long winded way of going about discussing why I don't think that this transfer window has been a catastrophe. I actually see it as an investment in our future. I'm confident that we have enough going forward to finish in the top two. And we then have a fighting fund to upgrade the squad as we go into the Premiership. And if there's nothing that we've learned from this window, we would have had transfer targets, make no doubt about it. The 49ers are a massive multinational organization with really well established systems. We don't have Victor Orta running around with his binoculars picking reclamation projects. We are systematic. We identify our targets, and then we ruthlessly pursue those targets. And if those targets don't become available, well, we're not just going to go and splash the cash on a speculation, especially if it's unlikely to make the team any stronger. So I'm very comfortable with the maturity that this shows is being put into running this football club, especially as we move forward trying to get promoted into the Premier League. So, how good's that? Those are my thoughts. If you've got your own thoughts, and I hope you do, that's what the comments are for. Please, nothing abusive. I plan to put more stuff on the internet because one of the best things I feel about following Leeds United, and as you can tell from my accent, I am Australian. So it's a lonely business following Leeds United from Australia, especially if you are Australian and you're not an expat. Obviously, if you're an expat, you tend to, you'll know people who've come over, etc., etc., etc. So, but if you're an Australian following Leeds United, it can be a lonely business. It's 1 a.m. kickoffs, it's 3 a.m. kickoffs, it's watching it on your own. So one thing that I want to channel Leeds 360 towards is making a focus of Leeds 360, bringing fans together. Predominantly Australian flags, but I know there are fan groups through Asia, maybe even the US. So, one thing that I will focus on doing is looking through the social media platforms, not so much on transfer news and people, carrying on about how they dislike Melier, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and all that kind of stuff, because I find that a little exhausting, quite frankly, but focusing on the fan experience because the best thing about following Leeds United is it's a proper football club, in my opinion. It's not a multinational. It's not, I mean, Man City, and I've no doubt that there are Manchester City fans that have been Man City fans forever, for their whole lives. Their dad was, their mum was, they are. But there's also a whole lot of Man City fans that are basically like Golden State Warrior fans. They basically just wear the strip. They're commercial fans. And if it wasn't Man City, it'd be whoever the next commercially viable team is. Leeds is nothing like that. If you see someone wearing a Leeds United strip down at the shops or on a plane, you know that they're a fan. And more the point, the bond. I mean, just the other day I was down at the Lawn Bowls Club, and I've sent a ball scooting down because I'm a really bad lawn bowler, and it's whacked some solid guy in the ankle, and I thought, oh God, I might be in trouble here. So I've wandered down to apologise, and And anyway, he's gone, oh, blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh, you're from England. And he's gone, yeah, 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 yeah. And I said, yeah, actually, I plan to go live in, go and it's on my bucket list to go and watch a season of football because I'm a huge Leeds United fan. And he's gone, what? What did you say? And I thought, oh, God, he's going to be a scum fan. This is going to be awkward, especially after I just clobbered him in the ankle with a bowling ball. And he's gone, no, 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 what did you say before that? I said, oh, I'm a Leeds fan. And he goes, oh, and he's immediately leapt up. Next thing you know, he's ripping up the leg of his trousers to show me his Leeds tat. And honestly, you just can't script that stuff. You're at a lawn bowls club in the eastern suburbs of Brisbane. You've hit someone with a lawn bowl, and they're a Leeds fan. It's just awesome. So I'm really passionate about getting into the club, engaging in the fan life, trying to link people up with other fans. And look, I don't care whether it's, talking to Jono about going with the Queensland Whites and watching a Leeds fan down at the Leeds game down at Pig and Whistle. Maybe you don't, maybe that's not something that you can do. Maybe it's just linking up with a couple of mates on a Zoom call so that you can talk to each other as you're watching the match at 1 o'clock in the morning, because it's hard yakka. But all that sort of stuff, and then linking it into all the experiences that you see from people putting on the social media chats and all that sort of positive stuff that really communicates that beating heart and soul of what it's like to bleed white. In any case, I'll cut it short there because it's probably already been longer than what I was hoping for. Like, share, subscribe, write in the comments if you feel strongly about it, or even if you just think I'm different. I'm more than happy to have the conversation. This is Ice Ice Bailey, out.